Hello, everyone. It looks like I am live, and I was just waving like an idiot for no reason for a couple of seconds. That's what I do. That's what we're all here to see on stream, right? It's just me waving right at you. Oh, we're already sticking. We're already kicking tonight off with a bang, no doubt. Welcome to Cinemateq. My name is TJ. Today we're doing something a little bit different, a little bit new, something I would like to do more of in the future, and that is do a live stream a little bit later in the evening that is solely dedicated to talking about movies that I have just watched. These, of course, will be films that I watched earlier today and films that are coming out this weekend. So you guys will be able to go and see them maybe tonight if you were early birds on that, and over the weekend if you are not early birds like me. So today I saw three films. I'll be talking about each one individually, and those films are Kimi, the new Steven Soderbergh film, Death on the Nile, the new Kenneth Branagh film, which is the sequel to Murder on the Orient Express, and The Worst Person in the World, the recently Oscar-nominated film. Lots to say about all of them. I think I'm going to start with Kimi unless there are any objections. So once again, if you'd like to get in the chat, let me know what you're thinking about these films. That'd be cool. If not, that's also all right. We're just here to have some fun and talk about some movies. So Kimi, I think, requires a little bit of setup because I don't know how many people actually know about this film. The degree to which it was promoted by HBO Max is lost on me. I have no idea. So it is the new film from Steven Soderbergh, and if you've been following his career at all, you'll know that over the last couple of years, he's been really into doing like these lower budget, more niche type films. Still thrillers, still in his style, but he's just pumping them out. And I think he's like doing something like almost a film a year or two films a year at this point. Like the man is on a mission to just make as many films as he possibly can. And I'm really happy that he does this because he's one of the few directors working today who will actually focus on making a 90-minute thriller, on doing these kind of mid-budget to low-budget films, but trying to get in a somewhat well-known actor in order to get that recognition. So I think it's a cool film to check out for that, and he's a good director to keep an eye on because he's doing lots of cool stuff. Looks like we got someone here in the chat. I'm on my laptop in bed, so I may not be around for long. Have you seen the Jurassic Park 3 trailer? It looks amazing. I wasn't super hyped on the Jurassic Park 3 trailer, to be perfectly honest. There's something about the scene where they introduce Alan Grant and Laura Dern's character together. It just looks like it was shot wrong. It makes me think that maybe it was cropped or something weird like that. Like just the way that the characters are framed doesn't look right to me. Doesn't look right at all. Uh, but there'll be more to say about Jurassic Park in the coming weeks and months, I'm sure. I can't remember when it's coming out, but I think it's what, June, July? So it'll be one of the big summer movies to look for. Absolutely. So to return to Kimi, the film that you can now all watch on HBO Max or Crave if you are in North America, or probably through other means if you so wish, so deemed, so wanted to. And I can just give a basic overview of the film. Essentially, it stars Zoe Kravitz, and she plays Angela Childs, who is a tech worker who works for a kind of Amazon, Google-like company, and this company specializes in personal virtual assistants, kind of like Alexa and the Google Assistant and Siri and all of that nonsense. But the thing that's different about this particular assistant, which is called Kimi, which is the name of the movie, is that if you have a bad interaction with Kimi, if it like messes up, if it doesn't quite understand what you're trying to say, then that conversation is forwarded to a human being who looks at and listens to this interaction and tries to figure out what went wrong, and then they update the code of Kimi kind of on the fly, so it adapts to that individual person. One of the examples that they gave in the film was someone kept asking for like the kitchen towels or something like that. And yeah, they wanted to know where they could buy kitchen towels. And Kimi, the computer, didn't really understand that kitchen towels is just another way of saying paper towels. And so the person, our lead character, played by Zoe Kravitz, is like doing some Python coding and being like, kitchen towels equals paper towels. And then like, she moves on to the next one. So if this was the entire breadth of the film, it'd be fucking boring, but it's not because there's a thriller here. And so what ends up happening is that as Angela Childs, our main character, is going through this queue of fixes that need to be made, she comes across what sounds like an assault. And she starts getting curious about this. As we find out later about the character, she has been traumatized a couple of different times, and she really latches onto this because she feels like a woman is in distress, and she wants to do everything that she can to help this woman out. So she does some digging, does some digital detective work, and she finds more things being recorded by this Kimi unit that belongs to the person who was assaulted. And as it turns out, this big corporation doesn't give a shit about your privacy. Big surprise. And as this progresses, we find out that the perpetrator is, and this is a minor spoiler, so, plug your ears if you don't want a spoiler. Although I think they pretty much allude to it in the very first scene, so it's not that much of a spoiler. But the person who committed the assault is the owner of the company that the main character works for. The owner, or the CEO of the company that created Kimi. So naturally, this is a big old problem. And that sort of kicks off the second half of the film, and it turns into a bit of a wild ride at that point, because Angela is trying to do the right thing, but she's being stopped and hunted at every turn because like the CEO's got a lot on the line, and he can't just turn himself over to the cops. Oh no, no, no. He takes drastic action. Hello, Forgotten Forgetfulness. Thank you for joining us. We're talking about Steven Soderbergh's new film, Kimi. And so that's about as much as the plot as I want to get into with that film. I think it's I think it's enough for you guys to kind of understand what the film is about. And I can just give like my overall review, my general thoughts of it. First of all, this movie is only 90 minutes long. It's just a 90-minute long film. And like, hallelujah for that. Tell me the last time you watched a movie that was exactly 90 minutes long. I think Kimi is actually 89 minutes, but just try to think back. Think back to a time in your life when you watched a movie that was exactly 90 minutes long. Those don't really exist anymore, and it's a damn shame. So right off the bat, that's one thing that I can say is great about Kimi. Even if you don't like it, it won't waste your time. Felix saying he's kind of keen to see it now. That's great. That's great to hear. That's what I love to hear. That's what I'm here for. I want to tell you guys about stuff. And so I will say that yes, it is a tight thriller. It pays off what it sets up, so the script is fairly tight as well. And I found it, largely engrossing. The story that I gave you, I think should be, or the plot synopsis I gave you should give you a fairly good idea of like why I think it's engaging. The film does take a bit of time at the beginning to set up the characters to, especially Zoe Kravitz. Zoe Kravitz's character, Angela. You get to know her various traumas. You get to know what her support systems are like. This, once again, is not a spoiler, but she is agoraphobic, so she's afraid of going outside. And this is actually something that I'll add to like the review of the film as being a positive. The way that Zoe Kravitz plays this character is pretty good. It's pretty good. It's just pretty good. There's a lot about the way that the character moves and interacts with the environment around her. And from it, you start to figure out and you start to get ideas as to who this person actually is without the need for discussion, without the need for someone to tell the character who they are so that we know who the character is. An example of this is that Zoe Kravitz's character is a very neat and tidy person who has an almost robotic way of moving about because they're very efficient when it comes to their movements. And so this sort of plays into the idea that this person is perhaps a germaphobe. We constantly see them cleaning, taking pillow covers off and putting them in the wash. Like cleaning and keeping things neat and tidy is like a central aspect of this person. But we get that more so in the way they move as opposed to someone saying like, Angela, you're just such a neat freak. And like it's refreshing that to see a director trust their lead performer enough to allow them to do that. And I think there's also some very interesting little moments throughout, like especially the first half of the film, where we get to see Angela perform in a way that's not exactly robotic. and it seems like it seems like it's harkening back to a previous life that she had before COVID and before her traumas and assaults. There's one scene in particular where she's on the phone with a guy that she's really interested in, and she starts moving in this almost graceful ballerina type way, being still very exact with her movements, but doing so in a graceful kind of way, in a way that you might expect a ballerina to move. And so it kind of says to me like, okay, this may have been something, dancing may have been something that was a part of her life before she became agoraphobic, before she became afraid of going outside, and then having that fear, that phobia, be reinforced by the pandemic. And it's just little things, but it does a lot. And I really appreciate Zoe Kravitz like going to that detail with her performance. So I was pretty into that. There is a downside to that though. Since she is playing robotic, or like moving kind of like an exact robotic way for most of the film, there are moments of like unintentional physical comedy where like the way that she's running in a very intense scene, is just kind of funny. It's partially also because of like where the camera is when it's being shot, but I just, she's being chased, like she's in danger, right? And I'm just kind of like laughing because her movements are comical, or at least they were comical to me. Maybe I'm just a weird person. So yeah, mostly really into her performance. There were a couple of like weird sort of missteps that created a kind of humor that I wasn't expecting, but overall really good. Also, I just see here, got another thing in the chat. I watch a lot of old movies, so I watched movies under an hour recently. Oh man, yeah, the back in the old days, the 19, well, I guess in the 1940s, the B movies, some of those would be like just barely over an hour. A lot of times under an hour and 20 minutes, and it was just very much like that same sort of tight, like we got a good guy, we got a bad guy, we got a mystery to solve, we got a woman in trouble, and it's all resolved and people are in love in like 65 minutes later. And not all of those movies are great, but I can appreciate the efficiency of those narratives like a lot. Continuing on with Kimi, something else about Steven Soderbergh films that I always, or I should restart that, my brain falls apart. Something that I always am really interested in when it comes to Steven Soderbergh films is how they're shot, because, and I don't know if anyone here would know this, but Steven Soderbergh is also his own cinematographer and his own editor, but they're credited under different names, which is like kind of a fun running joke throughout all of his films. And yeah, there's kind of like this underlying tone to like a lot of previous Oscar ceremonies, I think, because there was talk of like the editing or cinematography of one of his films being nominated. In fact, I think it was for Traffic. And it was kind of like, well, if he wins, like who comes up and accepts the award, because it's all under a pseudonym. So like, what are they going to do? So yeah, that's kind of fun. But anyway, I always look forward to the cinematography of a Soderbergh film. I really like his style. Kimi, the camera work wasn't his best, but he was trying to do something, I wouldn't call it like a basic film technique, but he did really embrace this idea of a subjective camera. And what I mean by that is that the camera acted in a way that was similar to the mental state of the main character. So for the first part of the film, when things are kind of calm and no one's really in danger, or at least we don't really know what the danger is yet, the camera is also very calm. It moves very slowly through scenes. Zoe Kravitz is conventionally framed, so I mean, kind of like how I'm framed right now, you can kind of imagine that would be how a medium close-up would be shot of Zoe Kravitz in this film. Like it was fairly just, it didn't, the cinematography didn't announce itself, didn't punch you in the face, didn't do anything like that. It was just very conventionally done, which for Soderbergh is strange because he's usually doing something, like playing with racking focus in a way that's like unique to him. He's doing something weird. So for that first part, because Zoe Kravitz's character is kind of calm, the camera is calm. But then when the action picks up in like the second half of the film, oh, the camera gets shaky. And this is actually delineated by inside and outside space, because for the first part of the film, we know that Zoe Kravitz like is afraid of going outside. We know that her character is afraid of going outside. Which there's a couple of scenes where she like goes up to the door, is about to go outside, and then can't, and like comes back from it. And then something in the film happens that necessitates her to leave the apartment. And as soon as she steps outside, and we move to a shot of her moving down the hallway, the camera is all of a sudden handheld, and it's a little bit shaky, and it's following her as if like someone is actually walking after her, and that's sort of the panicked kind of camera style that Soderbergh is going for. And then when we start getting into exteriors outside, the camera becomes like canted and tilted, and all kinds of strange framings are used. So once again, it's meant to mirror how Zoe Kravitz's character is feeling in that moment. So I did appreciate that. I thought it was a cool concept, but it still wasn't enough to make up for the fact that I expect more out of Soderbergh, especially when it comes to cinematography. But it was a nice experiment in like formal camera work that I can appreciate. I can appreciate it. If you're into that kind of stuff, maybe this is the kind of film that you'd be into too. Uh, 1918. Don't remember that one. 1918. You mean 1917? No, I don't think that's one you're talking about. Pay a PA to accept the award. Maybe. I'm actually just gonna do a quick check before I go on talking about Kimi, because I'm pretty sure Traffic was nominated for best cinematography at the Oscars. At least it should have been, certainly. I think it won Best Picture as well. Let's see, accolades, Academy Awards. Won Best Director, Best Supporting Actor, Best Adapted Screenplay, and Best Film Editing, but didn't win Best Picture? Are you kidding? That's some bullshit. But yeah, I guess cinematography wasn't it? Okay, but no. Oh, weird. Okay, so on Traffic he used a different editor than himself, and it was actually like a real person and not himself. So I guess we wouldn't have found out if he had won for that. Was it shut? Oh. Yeah, it was shot by Peter Andrews, which is a pseudonym for Steven Spielberg or for Steven Soderbergh. Yes. All right. So now that little tangent's over, um, yeah, I guess all that really remains from like a review standpoint for Kimi is just like things that I wasn't that into. I've been kind of clear that like I was a little let down by the cinematography, but was able to find something I liked about it in it. Pretty much everything else in the film that I would point to as being a flaw is just real nitpicky type stuff. For example, there's a scene later in the film where some professionals, some people who have been set up as being professionals, and like their menace in terms of like their menace to our main character and in the scope of the film, a lot of that depends on them being professional and being perceived as professional and being able to like hide basically in plain sight. And so there's a scene near the end of the film. I won't get into too many details, but they are out in public and like there's no one around, so like they're pretty safe. But then as they're doing this thing, you can very clearly see a camera on the wall behind them, and I'm guessing this was just part of, you know, the security system of the convenience store that they just happened to be in front of when they were shooting this, and they didn't think to take it out in post-production or anything like that. So you're kind of thinking to yourself, within this moment in the film, like these people are trying to be secret, they're trying to like do a cover up, they're trying to be real sneaky, but then they're just plainly on camera. And like based on the way that they're moving, you know that their faces are on that camera. And so I know it was unintentional, but it also just kind of brought me out of it a little bit. And the professionalism that these people were supposed to be presented as, or the fact that they were professionals and trying to be presented as professionals, was really undercut by that. I've had similar experiences with films, kind of like the Girl in the Spiderweb, that new film, like the post-millennium trilogy film, that what's his name? David Fincher made the first film, and then there's also the original 3 Swedish films. So that American version of like the girl who kicked the spiders, or the girl caught in the spider's web, or something like that. There's a moment in that film when like a trained professional like just kind of leaves his blood everywhere, and it's like, bro, you wouldn't. Or like he has his finger, he's like holding something and like his fingerprints are on it, and then he just like drops it, and it's like, no, you wouldn't do that. You're never gonna do that. You're a professional. Act like it. So this scene in Kimi kind of reminded me of that. But really, like any other bad thing I can say about the film is just like a nitpicky, stupid thing like that. Overall, I think the film is certainly worth your time because it's so short based on modern standards of filmmaking. And even if you end up not liking it, it's only 90 minutes of your life gone. So I think it's still worth a shot. And like I said, Soderbergh is like one of is like a really good director who has put out a bunch of good movies, and he's been doing like a lot of smaller films recently. And this is just another example of what he's able to do on a small budget. And I think he's still able to make a pretty effective and thrilling thriller. Let's see here. Sounds like the girl with the dragon tattoo series. Yes, it is. It is the girl with the dragon tattoo series. It's called the Millennium Trilogy, the original three books. But yeah, after the original author died, then they started doing. They started like getting other people to write more books for the main character Elizabeth Salander, and yeah, the girl in the spider web. Is that what it's called? The Girl in the Spider? Yeah, The Girl in the Spider's Web is a movie that came out like 4 years ago, I guess. Jeez Louise. Where does the time go? So for Kimi, one thing I want to do with like live streams like this is try to get into discussions, although I realize that's going to be probably a little difficult because a lot of people either haven't seen the film, but I'm going to try to like make these as broad as I possibly can, so you don't have to have you don't have to have seen the film in order to talk about them or to hear about them. And once again, I'll keep them kind of spoiler free. So the first thing that kind of struck me with Kimi was how heavily it relied on Alfred Hitchcock's film Rear Window, which I know once again is a shitty thing to bring up if you've never seen Alfred Hitchcock's Rear Window. But that is a film about a guy with a broken leg who sees a murder happen across the street, but he can't do anything about it. And the entire film is basically him trying to solve this and trying to like bring the person across the street to justice. And it's all very much contained in one space. There's no like agoraphobia going on, but the idea that like we have these two people in these two separate films stuck in a single space, and being witnesses to a crime that they can't really do much about, but they can still try their best to like figure it out and like put all the pieces together. There are clear allusions between the two films, and in fact, very early in Kimi, they have moments where where the lead character is looking out at the apartment building across the street, and like having those same kind of moments from the very beginning of Rear Window, where Jimmy Stewart's character is like seeing all of the different people, establishing the space in the apartment buildings on the other side, letting you see like who the characters are in those places. And so in Kimi, we get the same thing. We see like a kind of creepy guy who comes into play later. We see the person that she has developed a relationship with over the course of the pandemic. And that's kind of like the where the aesthetic choices, I guess, the cinematographic choices, and allusions to Rear Window stop, but it sort of continues on with the narrative. Of course, it sort of veers off in its own direction when lead character Angela, actually leaves her apartment and she's able to get over her phobia and just go and try to help this person. But like right off the bat, it really does feel like this film is very much indebted to Rear Window. So I don't really know actually what the discussion point there was. I think I just wanted to point it out. You're like, isn't it cool that it's kind of like Rear Window, but not? It's like a new modern take on Rear Window. I like that. Like having your leg broken, in the case of Jimmy Stewart in Rear Window, has been replaced by mental illness and trauma, and that's perfectly apt for the moment in history that we're in. Oh, and I just realized that I wanted to record this live stream so I could cut it up and put it out as videos. And I haven't started recording yet, so I'm going to do that right now. So at least the next two films I talk about, those can be made into stream highlights. Ah, yes. What a wonderful profession profession I've chosen for myself. Mm. I do make good popcorn, though. So the next thing that I think we can have a bit of a broader discussion about in relation to Kimi is how the film deals with. Actually, before I get onto that, I'll see what someone just put in the chat. These similarities are common, sometimes on purpose, like Halloween and thousands of slashers films. Oh, yeah. I'm not saying that this is like a rare thing. More so, I just enjoyed how it was making clear allusions to Rear Window, but then eventually went in its own direction. The setup was very much like Rear Window, and I think that Soderbergh is a smart enough filmmaker where he knows that he can get people kind of invested by showing them something that they're somewhat familiar with, and then make them a little bit uncomfortable when everything sort of changes. And he, takes something that made, in the case of Rear Window, so unique, with the main character being in one place for basically the entire film. You set that up in the beginning of Kimi, and then you sort of tear that away from the viewer. So if they do notice the Rear Window illusions, they may think like, oh, she's never going to leave the apartment, and then when she does, it's kind of like, I don't know where we're going anymore. So it's like a way of making your audience comfortable and then messing with them, right? So yeah, that's kind of like why I wanted to bring it up, but you kind of brought out my point for me, so thank you for that. Excuse me. Homages without ripping off is fun to watch. Yes, I agree, and they can be quite useful, as I just said. So yeah, something else I want to discuss about with this film is its relationship with technology. And when you start the film, you kind of feels like a Black Mirror episode, right? Because you're dealing with people who work for a company where they've made a virtual assistant, and you get like right off the bat like, oh, privacy doesn't really exist with this company, it doesn't really exist with this product. So naturally, this film is going to say to us, or like, well, maybe not lecture to us, but at least posit that allowing this kind of technology and this kind of surveillance in our own homes is detrimental, and that we should push back against this. It should at least be playing into general anxieties that people have when it comes to having these things in our home. And when it started, and I started seeing this, I was thinking to myself, man, Steven Soderbergh, like, make this film like 5 to 8 years ago, and you probably would have come across as being somewhat visionary, or at least playing more into what our anxieties actually were. Nowadays, like, everyone has these things in their homes. Like, I have a smart speaker in my bathroom that I have the actual microphone turned off on, because no one can listen to me go to the bathroom except for me and my cat. Um, and like, I also have like a smart soundbar on my TV, but I have all that stuff turned off because I really don't want people listening to me. But I know that I can do that. And the people who like buy the Alexas and buy the Google Assistants, they are aware of what's going on. You know, I'm sure that everyone knows that when you buy like a Facebook web camera, Facebook's taking data off of that and they're monetizing it, they're selling it, Like, there is no such thing as privacy when you invite a tech company into your home. And I say that full well knowing that I am live streaming on a Google website. Hi Google. Hope you're having a good day. Um, but so yeah, I thought that like the idea that the film was going to show me and play into those anxieties, I was like, that probably would have been better if they did it like a while ago. But then as the film progresses, start to see that it actually has a much different opinion on that kind of technology. More so that it is a benign thing that just exists in your space if you decide to bring it into your space. Um, and yeah, this really struck me as odd because the technology is just shown as being a tool. It's just that. It's just a tool. And there are moments in the film when Zoe Kravitz's character Angela is able to use the Kimi device to her advantage, to thwart people. And I just wasn't really expecting that. And so it seems like the film is taking the position that technology on its own is just a tool, and it really depends on those who run it and operate it. So don't so much worry about, Alexa being in your home. Worry more about the fact that it's Amazon and the people running Amazon who are in control of Alexa. And since, none of us really trust Amazon or Google or Facebook, I think we're well past the point of actually trusting tech companies. Um, it sort of makes this argument like the things that we benefit from when it comes to technology companies are good and beneficial, but we do need to be wary of the people who are in charge of everything. So it was a nice little like flick of a switch almost, where I went from being like, this movie's going to be so dated, to actually making a more nuanced argument as to how technology has forced itself into our lives and how we can think about the various assistants and pieces of technology that we surround ourselves with. So props to the film for that. And then finally, there is kind of the elephant in the room of this film, and I think actually a lot of films that we're going to see moving forward, and that is like how do they deal with COVID, right? And this is something that I'll just broadly ask everybody, like, how do you think that the pandemic should be represented in the film? And not to say not and I'm not talking about films that are specifically about the pandemic, but films where it's very clear that the characters in the film, like we have gone through the pandemic and are still going through the pandemic, right? So this is something that is very clear in Kimi, that the main character was this, and this is explicitly said, was doing okay, was figuring out their agoraphobia, like getting real good at it, and then the pandemic hit, and it really fucks them up. Like they basically go back to square one and become complete shut-ins, right? Um, and when they go outside, you see people are wearing masks. There's people social distancing. Like you can see this all throughout the film. And I'm wondering how people feel about this because I think we all are at that moment, or at least, I mean, some of us have been at that moment for a while. Some of us are just leading up to it. But we're all pretty much over the pandemic, even though the pandemic is not over with us. And I wonder if there's going to be kind of a movement within cinema to kind of forget that the pandemic happened, you know? Like I don't know if I want to pay, 13 bucks to go to a movie theater to watch a film to then be reminded of two of the worst years of my life, right? And I don't know if there's going to be any kind of healing that can happen based on that. Maybe it could, but I'd be interested to hear what people have to think about how they want the pandemic to be represented in films, if at all. Because my basic thinking about this is maybe not. Maybe we kind of just leave it alone. And of course, that's impossible because films always have this way of reflecting our own anxieties back to us. And they have a way of reflecting the society that we currently live in back to us, warts and all, and sometimes in very unexpected ways. So the fact that we all have gone through this trauma of living through a pandemic, that's something that's going to show up in films. Absolutely, no doubt that will be there. I'm just wondering, like, how do they do it? And will there be instances where they're like, you know what? This is supposed to be a happy film. Maybe we don't. Maybe we don't. Let's see, we got saying that they should handle it with indifference. Unless it's important to the story, everything is a side note. Have you seen the silent flu representations in silent films? Ooh, that's an interesting point. Like, I know I've seen films from, like, say, 1920. Like, or I can't remember if Nosferatu is from 1920 or 1922, but that would have happened. I mean, that particular story is set before the Spanish flu of 1918. But no, I don't actually remember seeing silent films that talked about the Spanish flu. That's a good point, actually. I should look that up. Have you seen any in particular that you can name? Because maybe I have seen some, and I just forget. I just have forgotten. But no, that's an excellent question. Oh, we have someone saying, "Hey, but I can't see who it is yet because my chat is slow." Uh, oh, it's Alexis. Hello, Alexis. Glad you could make it. We were just talking about Steven Soderbergh's new film, Kimi. I think pretty much at the end of the discussion of it for the most part. Cliff notes. Generally positive feelings about the film. I think Zoe Kravitz does a pretty good job in it. Very positive performance. And general points of discussion that I wanted to bring up. Comparisons to Alfred Hitchcock's Rear Window. The relationship that the film posits that we all have with technology and how technology is actually a benign thing and that, it's just the people who run these tech companies that we should be worried about, and how COVID is represented in film going forward and how we want it to be represented in film going forward. But yeah, I think that's pretty much all I wanted to say about Kimi in general. I would like to know from any of you guys who have been watching this whole time, are you going to check this film out? Like, do you feel like this is something that you would enjoy, like a film that you would like to see? And like, were you going to see it anyways? Because it's a Steven Soderbergh film, and that guy has a fairly committed audience. I would like to consider myself one of those, but he does make so many films that I do end up skipping them, unfortunately. I can't remember specific films. This is in reference to silent films that would have shown the Spanish flu. But it was common. It was common in comedies. If someone coughed or sneezed and the crowd moved, it was a Spanish flu reference joke. Oh my God, yes, that is true, and I can kind of remember a couple of scenes like that now that you said it. The Girlfriend Experience, another Soderbergh project. I have seen the I've seen the first season of the television series that they made for the Girlfriend Experience. Was there actually a Girlfriend Experience film? Okay, yeah, yeah. It was initially a film that Soderbergh directed in 2009, and then it was adapted into a TV series that was also, I think also what's his name? Soderbergh was the showrunner. Yeah, he was the executive producer on. Excuse me, because it was based off of his film. But the first season of the Girlfriend Experience is great. I don't know if I've seen the film version of it though. I probably should because it's probably something I would be into because I especially liked a lot of what Soderbergh was doing in that time period. Oh, and it does star Sasha Grey. That's right. That's right. Let's see. That came out in 2009. Yeah, that was the same year that he put out The Informant, and like it came right after his Che two-parter, which is wild. And then he did Contagion right after that. So that's probably like the part of his career that I know the best. Oh man, you guys remember Haywire, that action movie that he tried to do? That was wild. Doesn't that star like Gina Carano? Yeah, it does. She is not good in that film either. I'm just looking at Soderbergh. I'm looking at Soderbergh's filmography, and I'm like, there's movies here I want to watch. I still need to watch No Sudden Move from last year. That was another film that went like straight to streaming, but it's a crime thriller. 2 hours though. Come on, Soderbergh, make the short films. Gosh darn it. I don't see much of Soderbergh. Like what I saw though. Did you already talk about Worst Person in the World? No, no, we've only done Kimi so far. So there's still Worst Person in the World and Death on the Nile to talk about. But since you mentioned it, let's move on to Worst Person in the World. And I will say, like I've been thinking and I've been stewing about. I'm also just inviting my cat onto my lap right now. I've been thinking and I've been stewing on Kimmy like most of the day because I watched it at like 8 a.m. this morning. Whereas I just got out of a double bill of Worst Person in the World and Death on the Nile, so my thoughts are not going to be as formed, unfortunately. But I think we can at least have a conversation about it. Hey, there he is. There's a big cat. Oh, Rocco says hello, everybody. Can you say hello? Hmm? All right. I'm going to count that lick of the lips as a hello. I think he's actually trying to get after my popcorn right now because it's so salty and delicious. Um, so, Worst Person in the World, recently nominated for a few Oscars, one of the screenplay Oscars, Best International Film. Also, the lead actress in this film was nominated for a BAFTA. She also won Best Actress at the Cannes Film Festival. So, already going into this, I was like, okay, the things I need to focus on: script, performance. Like those were the big two, and this film did not disappoint in either of those respects. But I'll give you the basic outline of it first. As you may expect from a film called Worst Person in the World, the film is about a breakup, and it goes into pretty it gets into the weeds of a breakup, right? Not to like a Bergman like extent, but you spend a lot of time with the breakup and also setting up the relationship. Because that is what makes the breakup all the more emotional, is actually seeing these people in a good relationship and then seeing it all kind of fall apart. But that's not even where the story ends. So I guess just the broadest of broad overviews of this film. Uh, you have a woman, our lead character, Julie, and she is kind of fickle. We start off in sort of the prologue of the film, and the film is broken down into 12 sections plus a prologue and an epilogue. So in this prologue, we see that she is in school to become a doctor. But then she's like, you know what? I don't want to be a doctor. I want to be a psychologist. And then she's like, you know what? I don't want to be a psychologist. I want to be a photographer. And then she's a photographer. And then she's like, well, maybe I should work in a bookstore while I'm a photographer. And then she just works in a bookstore. But she's also like a writer, or she like kind of develops into a writer as the story goes on. But it's not like the main goal or narrative thrust for her. The narrative thrust is her relationship that she starts with an older man. She is like in her late 20s, I believe, by the time she actually meets this guy. Although it's a little nebulous with the dates, right? So you see someone starting like med school or like in med school, and I'm not sure how this would work in Norway where the film is from, but I imagine she's like in her early 20s by that point, like early to mid 20s. I assume like pre-med takes a bit of time. Um and then she like does these different things and meets this guy. So we're not really sure what her age is at that point, but we know he's 44. And there's like a moment very early on in the film where he's just like, "Oh, we can't be together. You're too young. The age difference is too much. You haven't fully formed as a human being yet, and there's no way that we will stay together." And at that point, she's kind of like, "Well, guess what, asshole? I'm in love with you." And then they just continue dating. So I think, yeah, it starts off with her being like in her mid 20s, to and he's about like, I guess, in his early 40s at the time. And then we kind of see very small snippets of their relationship over the course of, say, 5 years, because we do eventually get to her 30th birthday. And overall, that's most of like the first bit. Then, then she meets another guy, and they're very explicit about them not cheating on they're not going to cheat. That's something that they very clearly do. But there's like this very long drawn out scene, where they're like quote unquote not cheating, and they're just doing like all the things you could possibly do without actually like cheating. So like they're not kissing, they're not touching, but like they watch each other pee in the bathroom, because that's not cheating, watching someone pee, but like it involves genitals, so it's having a fun time. He's having a good old fun time. And it's at this moment, after our lead character doesn't cheat, that she we start to see the relationship with guy number one start to kind of fall apart. And at a very particular moment, she just says to herself, "I'm done. I'm done with this relationship. It's over. I'm not in this anymore. There's this other guy that I'm more interested in pursuing because I really connect with him." And so we get this very sort of, once again, drawn out emotional breakup scene. All of the actors in this film, by the way, are good. Like, there's not a bad performance in the whole bunch. Like, everyone here is super on point. And then after the breakup, she starts seeing this other guy like immediately. They move in, they make the best of it. They're both kind of working like minimum wage gigs, but they live in Norway, so they still have a pretty good quality of life. And then we find out that guy number one, and if you don't want spoilers, go away. We find out that guy number one actually has cancer. So, and we also find out that the lead character Julie becomes pregnant. And I feel like these spoilers are kind of okay, because like it's more the emotions and of the people and how they react to these situations that is like the meat of the film. So like it's not a melodramatic film where it's like, "Oh, you're pregnant." Like that's not a twist or anything like that. She just finds out she's pregnant, and that like changes things for her. And so it's the emotional journey that she goes through, having found out that she's pregnant, not having wanted kids in the past. That's what you're actually going for. So it's one of those films where like the plot, you can know the plot going in. It's the execution that will sway you one way or the other as to whether or not you think it's a good film or not. Um, so then, yeah, she basically goes and tries to like chat with guy number one, um, and they end up having like good conversations, and they are able, pardon me, to reconcile. They don't get back together, but they're able to reconcile, and then the film kind of ends with her having a miscarriage, so it loses the baby, and then guy number two ends up going off, having a kid with someone else, and she's sort of left being a photographer who's working in the film industry, and that's where the film basically ends. So that's the plot. That's where we are. My thoughts on it are pretty great. It's a top 10 of the year, or top 5 of the year for me. It was so mature and emotional. I was invested in all the way through. I love the Lynchian parts. Yeah, I'm going to talk about those. And it elevated the material. The encounter with the other guy is one of my favorite scenes ever. It was so perfect. Only issue was the ending, kind of meh, finished on a weird and out of place note. And what the hell, it's COVID time in the film. Anyway, the performances were godly. Yeah, the performances were really great. What do you mean by it's COVID time in the film? Like, the fact that like there weren't really face masks around. And this is kind of like an interesting thing with this film is that I think it actually takes place over a much longer time span than we are aware of. Like as I mentioned earlier, I think their relationship starts when she's in her mid 20s and kind of ends around when she's like turning 30. Um so we're basically seeing like little bits of their relationship over the course of like years. At least that's the way I'm taking it. Oh, she had a face mask. God, I must have missed that, or like I didn't even think of it. Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. COVID. It's gonna be with us forever. Um, so yeah, I guess maybe this would be a good way to get into actually talking a bit more about the film. Aside from the performances, which are great, and the writing, which is pretty good, there were some formalist things that go on there, like some dream sequency type stuff. One is when she kind of realizes in a moment that she needs to be with guy number two, and this happens. It's literally her flicking a switch. It's kind of cool. So she like turns on the kitchen light. Guy number one is right in front of her pouring coffee, but then everything except for her just goes completely still, and she runs off and is like running through Oslo, and everyone is frozen still. No one's moving, and she's just kind of like looking for guy number two, finds guy number two, and they kind of go off and have a really nice day together. They're just hanging out all throughout the night. They're definitely cheating, definitely doing the making out stuff. But because of the way that this is shown, it's a dream basically, or it's kind of a dreamlike representation of something that actually happened. And as a moment in the film, I think this works really well because it does bring a certain lightness to the proceedings. You know, it's been mostly a film about relationships, the nature of relationships, people, you know, arguing, fighting, getting back together, not being able to handle their kids properly. These are other couples in the film who are not the main couple. And when our main character has this sort of moment when she realizes, oh, I don't actually want to be with guy one anymore. It's kind of this wonderful epiphany for her, and she's able to go off and have this almost fairy tale like encounter with guy number two. Um, and I guess yeah, there's something. Actually, no, I'll split these up so I can clip them better later. And then there's another moment like this later on in the film where we get the main character, guy number two, and a couple of their friends, and they're like, you know what we should do? We should do some magic mushrooms. And you know what? They do magic mushrooms. And there are some pretty great hallucinations shown in this, all from the perspective of main character Julie. And I think from it, we start to get, or she starts to get the idea that maybe her relationship with her father isn't that good. How people from her past, especially guy number one, have kind of affected her and gotten into her brain, and she can't really get rid of them. And this is something that she kind of speaks of a little bit later in the film when she like speaks to guy number one as he's dealing with his cancer diagnosis. And yeah, it's just really nice to see because once again, it's kind of light and strange in a film that is just about relationships. And it just gives you that moment to kind of sit back, enjoy what is a really beautifully shot sequence that also involves some animation, which I was not expecting, and you're just able to have a bit of a good time. Which kind of brings me to the point that I was going to make, but I cut myself off. That I thought this film was going to be a lot funnier, and I don't know where I got that impression from. It was either like in the promotional materials that it was a comedy, or the trailer that I saw for it, like the North American trailer for it, presented it as a comedy or shown things in a comedic way. And so I was expecting a much funnier film when I went into it. And I did not get a funny film. There were certainly moments of comedy. I'm not going to deny that. But it is a much more emotionally heart-wrenching film than I was expecting, especially when you get to the end. When our main character Julie and guy number one are talking, and this is when he has He has cancer at this point, so he knows he's going to die, and he's talking about what it's like for him knowing that he's going to die. Um, and they actually have like a fucking fantastic conversation. It's one of those things that as soon as you see it, you know that it's going to be like referenced, and people are going to be like quoting lines from that and things like this. There's one really great line near the end where he's like, he's talking about how he's just like watching all of his old favorite movies, and he can't really bear to do anything new. Um, yeah, this is the scene I'm talking about, Alexis. When they're sitting outside the hospital, like made Alexis cry. Like, yeah, it was a very emotionally draining scene. But yeah, the guy is basically talking about how he can't look forward anymore, so he can't like watch anything new, and he's just watching all of this old stuff, but he doesn't really see it as it being nostalgia because all he's doing is like running away from his own death or something like that. And it was like this very powerful moment where it was like this recognition that he's trying to comfort himself, but it's all useless, right? Like he can't comfort this away. All he's doing is killing time until it's all over, but he can't do anything else except this. And yeah, it was like emotionally very emotional. Look at me being a pro film reviewer. It was emotionally very emotional. But yeah, and I guess maybe to speak a bit more about the quality of the film, you don't get payoffs like that. You don't get moments of emotional breakthrough for a character that can also affect the audience without incredibly good setup and incredibly good writing. And it is nominated for a Writing Academy Award. Probably doesn't win, mostly due to, you know, Oscar politics being what they are. But still very impressive. Very, very impressive. And there's also something else in this last conversation. And I think, honestly, now that I'm thinking about it a bit more and talking about it a bit with people who are here in the chat, I think that last scene between, or not, it's not the last scene, but the scene of guy number one um, and Julie, our main character, that scene where they're at the bench, like talking to each other at the hospital, like it's the crux of the whole film. Like it's what the entire film builds to, because they also start talking about the issue of legacy in that moment, and maybe Alexis, maybe you can speak to this because it sounds like you were also you might have been paying a bit more attention during this scene. But with the issue of legacy, I believe they say something along the lines of, you know, what good is having a legacy built upon. Oh, god damn it, cat! Ugh, his claws are so sharp. Um, Basically, he asks like, what's the good of having a legacy that is built on the things that you have done? And like guy number one is a famous comic book artist in the world of the film. What's the point of having a legacy built on what you have done when there won't be anyone left who know who you were, right? Who know how you actually were? Like, what good is that kind of legacy? Like, what good is having your name on a book or on a film when no one really knows you, and then that doesn't get to carry on in any kind of way? And that kind of hit me kind of hard because, and once again, I might be misremembering it, or I might just be putting my own perspective onto what I saw, and I'm like fudging what actually happened. But I've always been of this mindset where like I need to do something where my name can live on throughout history, right? It's one of the reasons why I'm so obsessed with film to a certain degree, because it's one of those things where you can immortalize yourself fairly easily, you know? You make a movie, that movie goes on IMDb. Your name exists as long as the internet exists, right? Maybe people can't find it. Maybe people don't know where it is, but it's there, right? And so it's like one of the reasons why I'm actually kind of happy I have some television credits to my name, and they're on IMDb, so my name will live on forever. I'm also really, I'm also like, it's also one of the reasons why I'm kind of interested in live streaming and building this community, is like, you know, selfishly, personal legacy. It's what I will be remembered for, and I feel like if what I'm remembered for is like talking about films and sharing things with you guys and talking about how films affect me and things like that, it's not just, you know, the what I did that's being left behind, but it's also in ways like part of who I actually am. And that was, I guess, something that really hit me hard about this. And it kind of made me like recontextualize why I'm actually doing stuff, because it's not just about, you know, fame on its own. It's about leaving a part of myself that's readily available for people on the internet, as long as YouTube exists as a channel forever and ever and ever. Which, yeah, probably will. Google's got a bit of money. But yeah, like part of what I'm doing, has to do with that very, very clearly to me. Um, so yeah, it's this film just like figured out a way of really getting at the core of me, and it sounds like other people as well. Um, I'll just go to Alexis here saying, "Did you finish film school? I'm currently in my first year at university in film studies." Yes, I've done a lot of film school actually. I did a film studies. I did film studies at university for 4 years. Got my degree. I did filmmaking at college for a year after that, and then a couple of years went by, and I went back for a master's degree in film preservation. So I've got some stuff going on. Asking what's my name for IMDb. I don't know if I want to give out my last name on a stream, but I will say that if you want to look up, I mean, I guess I might as well just give away my full name then, if I'm going to say this. But if you go and look up a series called The Next Step, if you check out the first season and look at the post-production tab, you will find me as one of the assistant editors. Let's see what else you said. I had my greatest idea just yesterday about a film I want to make. Experimental stuff made me hope. Yeah, I mean, best advice I can give you on that is just make it. Like, if it's something that you can just do, then do it. I was doing this a lot in university when, I had the time, basically. I would wake up, on a day where I had nothing to do and be like, oh, I wonder if I can make a film in 4 hours. And I would just pick up a camera and start shooting, and then figure out like what the film was like after I'd already started shooting, and then think like, oh, I'm gonna do this, and like it ends up being experimental in a way. And then I also like did everything. So like I wrote the score for it and like played it on bass, and it was very simple, very 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 basic. But I felt it kind of worked. And then edited it, cut it together, and basically released it. I don't know if I would have put it on YouTube or if it would have been available at that point, but it's on YouTube now, somewhere. Not on this channel, on a different one. And I will not be revealing the name of that one. But yes. If you have an idea and you can do it, just do it. Just do it. And even if it doesn't turn out the way you want it to, you're going to figure out, you can always use it as a way to figure out how to make a difference or do something different later on. Which is like, failure is the best teacher, as they say. And it's especially true with filmmaking. Powerful in a way. In a way, it might seem superficial, but maybe important to those who experience it. To the character, he's worried about passing legacies through personal connections he lacks. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, no, it's fascinating the way it's typified, because there's so much other stuff in the film that I haven't talked about in relationship to him that also really underlines like what he talks about in terms of legacy. That is really cool. Like it's good. Like I wouldn't say that it's like overtly philosophical. It's not so dense or existential that it would put you off, but it really cut to the core of like what it is to be someone who's like staring down the barrel of their own demise and trying to figure out like how they're going to be remembered, or if people are going to remember them. And the kind of thoughts that come out of it are pretty profound in my estimation. It's all right if you don't say no worries. Yeah, I can do it. Probably going to do it within a year. Awesome. When you finish it, let us know. We'll screen it during one of the live streams. We'll have like a Cinemateq Film Festival or something like that. Yeah, so, oh, and yeah, kind of the last thing I wanted to touch on with worst person in the world. She's not the worst person in the world. This is something I kept thinking about while watching the film, and this is one of the reasons why I thought that it was going to be a comedy, because of the name of the film. Like, this is going to be a comedy because she's the worst person in the world, and she keeps doing all of the worst things that you can imagine a person doing in the circumstances of a breakup happening. And she's not the worst person in the world at all. At all. I actually related quite a bit to her, and I'm not the worst person in the world. I'm not the worst person in the world. No. No, 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 no. Not at all. But I just see her as being someone who's like, I'm going to try stuff, and if it doesn't work for me, I'm not going to do those things anymore. I'm always going to be in pursuit of what makes me happy. And that is illustrated in the very beginning with her schooling and trying to figure out if she's going to be a doctor or a psychologist or a photographer. And eventually it turns out to be photography. And that also carries over into her relationships. She like doesn't have a problem with taking a chance on getting into a relationship with a guy who's like 44, who's going to have very different needs and wants in comparison to her in terms of like starting a family, raising children, things like this. But she does so because she loves the guy and she just wants to try. She wants so desperately to try. And so she does. And then when it turns out to not be working for her and that it's not what she wants to do, she's very honest with the guy. And even though I think their breakup is shown as being kind of subtle, there are also little things weaved into the parts of their relationship that we see where you get the idea that maybe they're not the happiest couple, right? Um, and so when she does get into a relationship with guy number two, it's also just her following her heart, being the happiest person that she can be. And, I think we can all relate to that. Like when you're in and going through relationships, you're kind of chasing love to a certain extent. It's one of the reasons why dating apps are so fucking terrible, because it doesn't give you enough time to actually figure out if you are in love. Otherwise, you're just like swipe next, on to the next one. Um, so yeah, it's I see Alexis here saying it's an ironic title. I wish someone had told me that beforehand. I thought it was more on the nose. I thought it was more on the nose, and I was just gonna watch a comedy film about someone being fucking terrible for 2 hours, and then it wasn't. It wasn't. But yeah, it still doesn't diminish the film, and in fact, I think this ends up being a film that will have more staying power, especially in terms of like how people discuss international film moving forward. I don't think it has a shot at beating Drive My Car at the Oscars, although I really doubt it. Um, but it does strike me as the kind of film that, like, in the same way as Portrait of a Lady on Fire, if you give it a couple of watches, I'm sure there's some stuff in there that you start seeing and noticing, and it will just become a kind of essential film to you if you really give it that time and let it sort of leach into you in the way that I think it will for those of us who will go back and watch it multiple times. Um, yes. And yeah, just to go back to what you were saying, FF, foundation level philosophy like the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Yeah, yeah. And you never know if something is going to fail when you take that first step. So you might as well just take that first step and find out, right? There's no point in saying to yourself, you know what, everything's going to go real bad, so I'm just going to not and like stay inside or something like that. Which is kind of how the pandemic has been, now that I'm thinking about it. Kimi and the worst person in the world. Oddly good pairing of films. So I think that's all I'm going to say about Worst Person in the World, other than like you should see it. The performance is incredible. It was lauded for a reason, and I just can't imagine like people watching it and not getting something out of it, having some kind of emotional connection to it. So please see it if you have the opportunity. If you have to watch it on streaming, okay. But if you can see it in a theater, see it in a theater. As with all films, always try to see them in theaters. So now it's time to turn on the barbecue because, oh boy, are we going to be roasting something. Death on the Nile, the latest film from Kenneth Braga, the second film in the Herqua, I can't even say his goddamn name correctly, Poirot. Hercule Poirot, greatest detective in the world. The previous film, The Murder on the Orient Express, was a kind of reintroduction of that character into the popular consciousness. There were a couple of films made in the 70s. Actually, I think 3 films, but Poirot was played by, or Poirot? Poirot? How am I? If I'm gonna roast the movie, I might as well try to get, yeah, Poirot. Poirot. Yes. Poirot. If I'm gonna roast the film, I might as well get the guy's name right. So yeah, this is like kind of a pseudo remake of the Poirot films made in the 1970s. There was Murder on the Orient Express. There was Death on the Nile, and then I believe there was also another one which I have seen, but I forget the name of now. Yes, yes, Poirot. That's the one. Um, and goddamn, that movie was just not very good. The new Death on the Nile is just not good. It's just not a good movie. I'll talk. I'll get more in depth about it, but I just need to give some greater context to it. So, Murder on the Orient Express that came out a couple of years ago. That's sort of this first step in the modern. I'm not even gonna call it reinvention because the film still plays in a very traditional way. Like if you watch the first Murder on the Orient Express from the 70s, you're not going to get much of anything new in the new one. Um, but but for whatever reason, because Death on the Nile comes out, they felt like they needed to give Poirot a kind of origin story, which is how the film starts. So I'll get into the plot. Actually, maybe I'll just do the full plot thing now. I'm a little over the place because this movie has left me just spiraling because of its not greatness. And maybe this is because I watched it like right after The Worst Person in the World, which is like a legitimately, top 10 film of the year contender, whereas Death on the Nile is just trash. Just trash. Um but yeah, basic premise is that a couple wants to get married, and then a friend of the bride, or soon to be bride, shows up at a party. Poirot is there, so he observes all this. The friend is introduced to the couple. The new friend and the guy actually end up getting married and ditching the first sort of fiance. And then the new couple have their wedding party, are having this whole goddamn thing, honeymoon, that they're bringing people along on, which is weird. And they basically they're in Egypt when all this is happening. So they get on a boat and they have this party on a boat, and then people die on the boat, and then Poirot figures out who killed the people on the boat. There's obviously a lot more going on, but I'm not going to recount everything that happens in this film because it is a murder mystery. So if you are going to watch it, I will attempt to not spoil it for you. But what I will spoil, and this is something that just like surprised me all to hell when this movie started, is that we start off with a Poirot origin story, the first scene. And wouldn't you know it, it's in World War One. And it's in black and white, so immediately I started thinking about Belfast too, which doesn't do this film any favors either. Um, and so as it turns out, and like I swear to you, this is what happens in the introduction of this film. Uh, a captain in the Belgian army gets new orders that says that he and his men must go over the top and try to take the bridge from the Germans. And everyone's like, well, we're going to die if we do that, and that's going to suck. And the captain's like, yes, but we get to die for our country, and that is a great thing. That is a great honor. And then Poirot, a young Poirot, is there, and he's like, well, Captain, why don't we just attack right now because the wind's going in the right direction? The captain's like, how could you possibly know that? And Poirot gives this, speech about how the birds fly in very particular ways depending on how the wind is going to blow. And they're blowing in the way that, or sorry, and the birds are flying in the way that would indicate that the wind is going to be very good for them right now. And so the captain's like, all right. So they go and do the attack, and they beat the Germans. They push them back. The Germans don't know what's going on. They forget how to fire their guns. It's a great moment for the Belgian army. And the captain is like, good job, Poirot. And I also need to mention this exact moment that in this flashback sequence, the captain has like the big Poirot mustache that he's kind of known for. And Poirot himself is clean shaven completely. So it looks kind of strange. So the captain is like, Poirot, you did a great service to your country. You've saved, so many lives today. And Poirot is like, oh, thanks, Captain. And then as the captain goes to walk away, Poirot realizes that the captain's about to like trip a tripwire. And he's like, Captain, no! And then he trips the tripwire, blows up, and basically Poirot gets like kind of half blown up, like in the face. Cut to a little while later, where Poirot is like laying down in a bed in a medical facility, and his like love interest comes in. And my experience with Poirot has only really ever been the film, like the Poirot films, like the three that were made back in the 70s, and then Murder on the Orient Express that came out a couple of years ago. And I've never really remember them talking about Poirot being in a relationship at all. But so in any case, we get this person arriving and just saying to Poirot, like, you know what? I love you. I love you no matter what. It's meant to be this very emotional moment. And Poirot, like, he has his face turned so she can't see part of his face. I swear this actually happens, this next part. I swear it happens. He has his face turned and he's like, no, you can't love me anymore. Like, we were children when I made those promises. It's fine. Like, you don't have to stay here. And she's like, no, my love, I love you. Like, this is not the dialogue. I'm making this dialogue up, but this is basically what's happening. No, my love, I love you. I love you no matter what. And then this kind of like very melodramatic way, he like turns to look at her, and like part of his face, like his entire upper lip and like part of his face here has been like fucked up by the explosion. So it's just like basically gaping wounds. And he's like, oh, really? How about now? And I swear to you, this is what happens. She looks at him. She kind of has like a moment where she's like a little bit of like, oh my God, this is how he looks now. But then she's like, no, 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 this is the man I love. And she looks him dead in the eyes and says, well, I guess you'll have to grow a mustache. And that's how we start the movie. That's how the movie starts. I swear to you. In close-up, like this, black and white, she's got big eyes, she looks very, like, upset, and she's like, well then, you'll just have to grow a mustache. I couldn't fucking believe it. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it when she said that. So not only do we get a Poirot origin story, but we get a Poirot mustache origin story. And the thing that kind of pisses me off the most about this is, like, we know what the Poirot mustache looks like. Like, it comes out to like about here, right? And like it's very like neat and whatever, and he like twirls it to make it look a very similar way. But the wounds on his face very clearly extend like up to here. Like, even if the dude were to grow a full beard, it's not covering all of it. But then as the film progresses, the scarring that would be on his cheek is just gone. You just don't see any of it. So it's like, we didn't need this origin story because it's not covering anything up because there's no scarring. And I'll get to why this is ridiculous in a bit, but I just really wanted to underline how dumb this is. Like, then you'll just have to grow a mustache. And it's the same mustache as the captain. Like, and yeah, I see, yeah, it's just like the origin name story of Han Solo. It's probably, yeah, it's on that level. It's on that level. Oh, it was ridiculous. But then beyond that, one of the reasons that they decided to go with this origin story is that they needed to kind of set up Poirot's previous romantic relationships, because that does play into how he interacts with people in this film. What bothers me is that, like, I can't remember from the first Death on the Nile that I saw from like 78, 76 or 78. I can't remember if his relationships or his previous relationships played any part in that film. And I don't think they did. Which kind of leads me to one of the big problems with this film. It's so melodramatic. Like, overtly melodramatic. When I was writing my little tiny review for Letterboxd for this, I was trying to figure out the best way to, like, call it high school drama, but like on the Nile. And I probably just should have said like high school drama on the Nile, but I needed to do something a little bit more clever than that. But that is essentially how the film presents itself. Like, every line that everyone says is like so over the top. And when you start getting into the actual conversations that people have, especially after like the first murder happens, it's always a lot of tears and like, I always loved you, or like, I don't know what love is, or I've forgotten how to love, or blah, 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 and all this stuff. And it's just so much. And you just don't deal with it because, like, you can't connect with it because this is not how people behave. It's not how they act. It's not how they talk. And like I get that they're going for like a very particular type of story. Like it's a kind of absurd murder mystery, especially when you get to how the murder was actually committed. But the extreme melodrama presented really undercuts the mystery of the film. And it seems like they felt that the mystery wasn't good enough on its own to actually drive the film, and that they needed to just replace that with melodrama, with, yeah, soap opera on the Nile. You're very right. That's a very good way of describing it. Um, and yeah, it's just so distracting. And then there's another thing about the film that really bothered me. And this might be an instance. I'll just say this, where I noticed something early on, and then I only notice it from that point on, and I don't really recognize other things. So I noticed kind of early in the film that they were using a lot of close-ups, like more close-ups than you would typically use in a film. And this sort of plays into the melodrama that's going on, right? If you're doing lots of melodramatic stuff, it makes sense to frame characters like right here. Well, I mean, sometimes it's like right here, but like here typically, because you want to be focused on the face and the emotions that their face are showing when they're being so melodramatic. And it just continues. So in the same way that the melodrama continues, this framing of people like in close up just permeates the entire film. I noticed this as well when I was watching a 90s thriller a couple of weeks ago called The Bone Collector. It's got Denzel Washington and Angelina Jolie in it, but it also overuses close-ups. And I find that like in the same way that the melodrama kind of exhausted me, I just got fed up with the close-ups. Like, to me, I don't know like what school of thought this necessarily comes from, or maybe it's just something I kind of decided when I was in film school or just after watching a lot of films. But I think you need to save close-ups for important things when you're trying to highlight something, or when someone has kind of like an epiphany or things like this. If you overuse it, it loses so much, and it takes away from your ability to have a more affecting moment later on in the film, right? Because if everything is in close-up, and then 2 hours into the film, someone like realizes something or says something very important, and it's like in close-up, it doesn't matter because everything's been in close-up. And it's just, it just bothers me from like a filmmaking standpoint. Like, don't do this. Alexis, I know you just said that you're in film school. Please don't do what I'm talking about, unless there's like a very specific experimental thing you're trying to do, in which case, cool, whatever. But like in narrative cinema, I feel like you got to save close-ups a little bit more than what Kenneth Branagh was doing in this film. And then, yeah, I guess the final thing to say on this, and I kind of alluded to this, is that the mystery kind of takes a backseat to the melodrama. Um, and I think the mystery in Branagh's first Poirot film, Murder on the Orient Express, was represented much better. And I don't know if that has to do with just it being a stronger mystery than Death on the Nile. But I also remember watching the 1978 version, or the earlier version of Death on the Nile. Can't remember what year it's actually from, but I think it's 78. I remember watching that and being intrigued by the mystery because it seemed like everyone had an alibi, and it really took Poirot like some doing to like figure it out. Whereas in this one, it kind of feels like he just, like, the film goes on for a certain amount of time and then he sits everyone down and solves it. And there's one thing in this film that, I mean, there's a lot of things that annoyed me. There's one thing in particular when it comes to like the solving the crime scene, which is in pretty much every Poirot film. You get a group of people together and you basically just tell the murderers who they are, and they just like confess to it on the spot. Um, there's an instance in the film, which I can't remember if it's part of the original mystery or not, where the Gal Gadot character and the Army Hammer character are like on a kind of oh, what is it? Kind of like one of those wonders of the ancient world type things, not the pyramids, but like another one. And they're like, they're standing on it like privileged people do in the 1930s. And someone like pushes a rock over the edge and tries to kill them. tries to kill them dead. They both get out of the way. No harm, no foul. Um, but then that's sort of just left. And we don't really get investigations into that because when they come back from the Seventh Wonder and get back onto the boat, then the main, who we think is the main antagonist, is also on the boat at that point. So it's like, who is this person and what are they doing? And like it basically just gets said like, oh, you did the rock thing. And the main antagonist, or at least who we think is the main antagonist, is like, I was on the boat the whole time. I wasn't over there. What are you talking about? And people can back that up. So it's kind of like, it kind of functions as a way of like throwing the suspicions of the audience kind of like all over the place, and we're not really supposed to know what to think. It's not the Sphinx either. The Sphinx is at the Great Pyramids of Giza. No, it's like the tomb of Ramses the First, I believe. And so we get to the scene where he solves the mystery, and the first thing that Poirot does is just look at a guy, point at him, and say, you were the one who tipped the rock over. And then we're shown like an image of the guy he's pointing at tipping the rock over. And the guy's like, you're right. I tipped the rock over. And I'm like, what? That's completely unearned. There has been no investigation into this. Poirot has not. And Poirot, like in his typical way, he will like let you know how he came to the conclusion, like how he figured it out. Like, oh, you said you were missing this scarf at this point in time, or like you said that your paint was stolen or whatever, and that's how I know that this happened, and like blah blah blah. Like he pieces things together. Just this one, he just like points at the guy's like, you tipped that rock, didn't you? The guy's like, I did tip the rock. Oh, woe is me. I don't know what I was thinking. I was just, doing some spur of the moment attempted murder, and it was like, oh god, why did I tip the rock? Completely unearned. Don't know where the fuck that came from. Am I the last in the chat? Well, you're the most newest. That's what I'll say. But I am talking about the third film, Death on the Nile. So you missed the discussion on the first two films. But in any case, this is the one that's going to be the most funny because Death on the Nile is fucking stupid. So yeah, guy just gets accused of tipping the rock, and he's like, "Yeah, I did it. I totally did it." And I'm like, "Fuck you, movie. Come on. Like, you can't just do this to me. You can't just do that." And like once again, it really just undercuts what the film is trying to do from a narrative, or from the perspective of its mystery film. And if it just like solves something without there being any kind of mystery, like fuck it. Like, what was the point of all that? And then we get to like the actual reveal of the killers and like their plot, or his plot or her plot. Maybe there weren't killers. Maybe there was only one. Who's to say? It feels weird protecting people from spoilers for a book that came out like 100 years ago, but I'm still going to do it. When they reveal how the killer and or killers did the final like did the deed, it kind of felt like Poirot was pulling it out of his ass too. Like there's a couple of things, and like he definitely was talking with people and like having conversations with them about what was going on. But it kind of seemed like they were reworking it in a way that just sort of like made it more convenient for him to solve it. And there's one sticking point that I can't really talk about without spoiling the film, so I won't. But like there's an inciting incident that like pisses off Poirot, and if you see the film, you'll know what I'm talking about. And it involves, I'll tell you some of it. It's like the last interview that Poirot has before he solves the murder. And and obviously Poirot is there, and also Armie Hammer's character is there, but is not the subject of the interview. He's interviewing someone else. And I don't really know why Armie Hammer is there. And that becomes a big problem when it comes to what happens in that interview and how that affects the ending. Like, why did Poirot do this? He's supposed to be the greatest detective of them all. Why would he bring someone into an interview when he didn't need to? And because of what he did, something happens. And that's the thing that pisses him off. But there's no real good reason as to why he did it in the first place. So it's kind of like they needed a reason to get them to the final scene, but they didn't know how. So they had the world's greatest detective do something kind of dumb. And like, I hate that shit. if you're gonna spend an entire movie literally telling me that he's the greatest detective in the world, and like this happens all the time. Someone will say like, "Oh, do you know my friend Poirot? He's the greatest detective in the world," and he'll be like, "Well, not the greatest. Actually, yes, I am the greatest detective in the whole world." If you spend an entire movie doing that, and then he just like does a dumb and it leads to a bad thing happening that then like sparks the conclusion of the film, it just says to me that you ran out of ideas with this plot that has already been done a couple of times and you made choices that were dumb and bad and stupid. And that's kind of how the entire film felt to me. So just it's a no from me, Kenneth. Um yeah. I will say though that there were some people in my theater who were having a good time with it. Like there was at one point an audible gasp when something happened, which I guess since I sort of had an idea of what was going on, I wouldn't have been going like in like a film, but there were people there that did, so I guess they didn't know the underlying story. So maybe if you've never seen it before, no, actually, you know what? If you've never seen it before, go watch Death on the Nile from like the 70s. It's a much better version of it, and I think they actually execute the mystery of it a lot better. And so when the final reveal happens and you find out like how the killer and or killers did the crime, you're kind of like, whoa, that's some planning. You guys put effort into this. Um, yeah. And so I don't really know what else I want to talk about in terms of that film. I had discussion point here, and like the only thing I really had was like opening sequence. Why? Why did you have that opening sequence? And really, it was just to heighten the melodrama in the film and to give Poirot kind of like some more emotional stakes, even though he didn't need them because there's like other ways you can develop it with the characters that were involved. But I don't know, guys. I don't know. Anyways, yeah, I'll just go back to so yeah, that's my opinion on Death on the Nile. You can fucking skip it. Watch the one from 1978 or whatever year it's from. Way better. Yeah, sounds like a fun movie. I don't know. Maybe if you're into watching like super over the top melodramatic films, you'll find Death on the Nile fun. But I did not. It is like a way less good film than Murder on the Orient Express, the Kenneth Branagh version. And I think both of those are pretty inferior to the versions of Poirot that we saw in the 70s on film. So yeah, just no. It's a no from me. So let's see what people were saying in the chat while I was taking this film to school. Uh, I'm wondering why Brent is just talking now about Jurassic Park 3. He means like Jurassic World 3 Dominion. The trailer came out today for the new film. It looks okay. I'm just worried about certain parts of it. More so in the way that they were shot and like presented in the trailer. It makes me feel like they took certain shots and like cropped them in to make like artificial close-ups, and it's just like it doesn't look great because of that. But that's only in like a couple of very small scenes. I'm still really into this idea of dinosaurs roaming free and humanity having to deal with that. And like, how do you deal with that? So yeah, I'm still interested in Jurassic Park 3, or sorry, Jurassic World 3. I think it might be okay. We'll see. But the first trailer, yeah, I'm mostly just like, cool. Didn't blow me away. Didn't make me think like, oh, this is going to be a wonderful thing. But I have positive feelings towards it, mostly. So they turned a famous detective into a pompous pseudo-intellectual in a melodramatic soap opera with an all-star cast. Yes. That is Death on the Nile to a T. Absolutely. What cinema did you catch it in? Death on the Nile I saw at Yonge and Dundas in their IMAX theater, which also made the fact that everything was in close up so much more apparent. Like I'm in an IMAX screen and there's like Gal Gadot's face fucking 80 feet high, just like right there. And so that even made it like a bit more overwhelming than I was expecting. But I think even if I were to watch that in my own like television room, whatever, the close up still would have been too much. It's not just because I was watching it in IMAX. There was just way too many of them, like way too often. It can't be worse than Robot versus the Aztec Mummy or Manos: The Hands of Fate. No, of course not. Like it's not going to end up on Mystery Science Theater 3000 or whatever. Like it's not that bad. It's just like it's a film where I disagree with pretty much every decision that was made. And that's basically it. I wish Gal Gadot exploited sex appeal more. I think she exploits it I mean, have you seen her in Fast and the Furious, in the Fast and the Furious movies? Like, and also like the Wonder Woman films are not shy about showing off her body. Like, I think she exploits it. She exploits it. She does well for herself. I don't watch trailers for movies I want to see. I only watch trailers for movies I don't want to see. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I usually just watch trailers for everything, and then I see so much stuff that I forget what the trailers are. But also, like, I tend to use them when it comes to like film festivals and stuff. I need to know what I should be interested in, and the trailers can really help with that. But that's when I'm going into a festival and there's like 60 films that I want to see just based on descriptions and filmmakers and things like that. And then it's the trailers that really sort of help me like hone in, help me find those 25 movies that I'm actually going to watch and not just go see 60 because that's fucking murder on yourself. If you ever go to a film festival thinking you're going to watch 60 films in 10 days, let me tell you right now, you goddamn are not. You will be skipping a couple of them and you will sleep through a few others. Stick to about 20. That's like that's a good amount. I know I like bad movies. Mediocre is fun. Better if it's flashy. Well, then Death on the Nile is for you, absolutely. And actually, if you do see it, like, let me know what you thought of it. Scream 5, worth seeing. Yes. I enjoyed Scream 5. Um, I also, and like, I had kind of a similar experience with watching Jackass as I did with watching Scream 5. It was kind of like just hanging out with old friends, you know? Scream 5 also, like, the Scream movies are always very meta. They always talk about like the rules of whatever of horror movies and how you can exploit those and how you need to know what they are in order to survive. And so Scream 5 is very much about like resequels is what they're termed in Scream 5, but basically films that bring back legacy characters but do kind of like pseudo like semi reboots of original films, but they bring back legacy characters while also introducing new characters. So, like the new Halloween films are a great example of that, and they're referenced explicitly in the film. And so, yeah, there's a lot of just like meta stuff going on, which is always great for the Scream films. Like, you just have fun with it. It also references quite a bit back to the original Scream. Like, they're back in Woodsboro. They go to a number of locations from the original film. Josh, I know you'll like this. They actually use the song Red Right Hand in Scream 5, which is a callback to the original film, of course. Um, and yeah, it's mostly just a fun time because it's really playing on nostalgia while also giving you some new stuff, a new cast of characters. It's a bit gorier, I think, than previous Screams. There's a bit more blood in it. But yeah, overall good. I had fun with it, and yeah, like Jackass Forever is great. Like that literally felt like I was hanging out with old friends. I used to watch Jackass like back in high school, and it was kind of like the cool thing to do. Um, and I've seen at least Jackass 1 and 2. I don't know if I saw Jackass 3D. But yeah, Jackass Forever. The stunts are fun. They're also bringing in new people, so like there could be future Jackass stuff where it doesn't need to be like the main cast anymore because there is something kind of weird of seeing people like in their mid 50s getting softballs thrown at their nuts. It's kind of like just retire, like enjoy yourself. Um so yeah, like and it is great. And there's lots of like moments where you're just like cringing and you feel terrible because you don't want anything bad to happen to those people. uh and then bad things really happen. There's also one guy in it, and I don't know if he's part of the original crew or not. I can't remember, but pretty much like the entire film is bad things happening to him with a couple of other people like spritzed in, and I just don't know if he gave the best reactions to all the stuff or he just was in the he just had did more stunts himself. But he takes the brunt of it. His nuts probably don't work anymore. His balls just don't work. He took This is the thing. This is one of the things that happens in Jackass Forever that they don't show in the trailers. This one guy gets hit in the nuts quite a bit, and one of them is taking a PK Subban, Canadian hockey player, slap shot to the nuts. Like wearing a cup, for sure, but still taking it to the nuts. He didn't walk right after that. Let's see. I recommend you the Todd Haynes Velvet Underground documentary. Yeah, I'm gonna watch that. It's on my watch list. It's a little bit less of a priority now, I think, because it didn't get nominated for best documentary at the Oscars. I'm pretty sure it didn't. But yeah, I'm gonna watch it eventually because I do like Todd Haynes, and supposedly supposedly the Velvet Underground were very influential, right? But I haven't watched it yet, and I know the Velvet Underground are very influential. I'm just saying. Let's see. Is that the documentary about the band with Lou Reed? Oh yeah, favorite album. Period. Damn. All right, cool. Yeah, and it's the best thing of the year, or almost. Right on, right on. Have you seen the Tinder Swindler Netflix crime doc? No, I didn't watch that. I stay away from a lot of true crime stuff. I just don't care for it. I'm all about the fictional crime, or like the fictionalized versions of crime that actually happened. Like that shit's cool. I was trying to think of the series that David Fincher did on Netflix. It's got 2 seasons. It's really good. I love the hell out of that show. Why can't I remember the name of it? I was gonna call it like Manhunter, but that's like a different film. David Fincher. I will solve this problem. But will I solve it before the chat? Who knows? Who knows? Filmmaking. No, god damn it. No, not Mank, not Gone Girl. Selected television works. Mindhunter. That's the one. That's some good shit. Ah, Alexis, you got it just before I did. You win the prize. There is no prize. Good stuff. Good stuff. Yeah, that slap shot to the nuts was pretty wild. Pretty deadly. Pretty deadly. Oh god, his nuts get fucked up so much. I guess also it's worth saying, like, like if you've seen Jackass before, you know what you're getting into. But like if you don't like male nudity, don't watch Jackass Forever. There's a lot of dicks in it, a lot of balls in it. So if you don't like that, or you're not like okay with it, just don't watch it. If you're a pansy and you can't handle seeing someone's balls, don't watch Jackass. You hear me? I don't know what I'm trying to do with that. All right. Anything else you guys want to talk about? Been going on for about an hour and a half now. You can probably look to see some of the stuff I talked about for Death on the Nile and Worst Person in the World turned into videos that'll be on the channel somewhat soon. Maybe one of them will even go tomorrow. I'm having a little bit of trouble. I have a new computer system right now that I picked up the other day, and it was specifically for live streaming, so I can both live stream and record at the same time, which is something I couldn't do on my MacBook. Even though it's like, advanced and super cool and was actually really good at editing. But then today I started editing a video. I was initially going to do just like a proper review video of Kimi, but then instead did it live today because I couldn't get the editing software to work on this new system, which is like really frustrating because this is supposed to be so much better than the MacBook, but it can't do editing as well. So I'm trying to figure out like what the problem is. And it's just, I hate it. I just hate it. I just like technology. Why don't you work? Because you should. I love it when actresses go balls out in a movie, i.e., Sharon Stone in Basic Instinct, or Kathleen Turner, Rosamund Pike, or Emma Stone in The Favorite. Yeah, yeah, you always appreciate it, and you always know that like there's a certain amount of trust there with the director. Like they are working with someone who they respect enough to do that for, right? Uh, so yeah, I always imagine that those are always like trusting relationships, or of course like the actress just might be in like they may just get paid a whole bunch of money to do that, and then they just do that because it's like, why not? Let's get this cash, you know. You gonna watch the Super Bowl halftime show this year? Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna watch the Super Bowl. Actually, that reminds me, I'm gonna be live streaming on Sunday. I have been doing Sunday live streams starting at 6 p.m., but because of the Super Bowl, I'm going to be doing it earlier. I'm going to be going live at around 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. In fact, exactly 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The subject of that live stream, I'm going to be seeing a film at 10 a.m. that morning at TIFF, which is a secret movie. I don't know what it is yet. I'm kind of hoping it's Parallel Mothers, but I don't think it will be because I think that's shown at TIFF or something like that. So I will be seeing a movie that is secret, and it's usually a good one. I have in the same series, I saw like Ghostbusters before it came out, the new one, Red Rocket before it came out. So I'm hoping it's something cool. And so I'll be talking about whatever that film is, plus any kind of new updates that any new updates that we have on the Oscar race. Although I think until there's actually some awards handed out, we're not really going to know a lot, but we'll be talking about it. So if you want to come hang out and talk about movies, next time I'll be live is Sunday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. What kind of CPU did you pick up? In the new computer, it's a Ryzen 5600X. So it's like current gen. It's not even a year old. The GPU on this thing is like real fucking good. Uh, so yeah, it's a really stupid, frustrating thing. I'm gonna try a couple of different things with DaVinci Resolve tomorrow to try to figure out what the issues are. Um, yeah, and I just hope I can get it to work the way I want it to, because nothing to me is as frustrating in this entire creation process is like knowing that you can edit at a particular speed and not being able to edit at that speed because the system is too slow to keep up with you. And that's kind of what I'm dealing with right now. This wasn't an issue with the MacBook, but like I said, streaming was an issue on the MacBook. And I'm going to be doing a lot more streaming, so I need a solid streaming computer. Just unfortunately, the editing isn't working the way I want it to right now. But I only tried it for a couple of hours. I had to like peace out and actually go watch the movies that I talked about today on it. So yeah, I'm gonna put a bit more of an effort into it tomorrow and try to figure out what I can do to make it so this issue doesn't crop up. Do you think deep water will ever see the light of day? Deep water is in deep doo doo. Deep water. I think I know what that is, but I'm just gonna double check. Oh no, it's something completely different. Deepwater is an upcoming American psychological thriller film directed by Adrian Lyne, or Lane, Lyon, I think, based on the 1957 novel of the same name by Patricia Highsmith, from a screenplay by Zach Helm and Sam Levinson. So it looks like. Oh, did it get delayed because like it's a Ben Affleck and a De Armas film and they were dating and now they're not dating and that's why it's getting like bumped back? Is that the reason? Uh, I don't know. Yeah, I'll get a sponsor when I get like thousands and thousands and thousands of more subscribers. So eventually it'll happen. You guys are going to be my first sponsors, maybe. This channel will be able to monetize when I hit 1,000 subs. So that's kind of my goal for the Oscars, is to get 1,000 subs before the Oscars. It's going to be tough as all hell. I don't think it's going to happen, but that's what I'm kind of hoping for. And then I'll be able to make a little bit of money on this, and then hopefully more money. So yeah, I don't know. Does this have a release date? I wasn't able to find like a Wikipedia article about it. Release date 2022. Yeah, it doesn't list anything. Yeah, so I don't know what's really going on with this film. I haven't seen any trailers for it either. The only thing it says here, like the last article about it, looks like it's from December, from Deadline talking about it. I can check that out. Skip ad. I don't need that. It's heading to streaming apparently, but that was as of December 13th, 2021. Oh, it's an erotic thriller. Streaming it's going to streaming after 20th Century Fox, or sorry, 20th Century Studios pulled from the Disney theatrical release calendar last week. We understand that Hulu will get domestic play. The movie, while Amazon will have streaming for the picture overseas. The movie was originally set to hit theaters on January 14th, so obviously we're past that. They don't really say anything about the release date here. Yeah, I don't know. It got delayed, don't know why. I mean, I have to wonder if it has to do with Ben Affleck and Ana de Armas like breaking up, and maybe Ben Affleck was a producer on the film and he just like wants it pushed back. I don't know. Like, yeah, maybe they're trying to bury it a little bit. Although they've already done that by putting it straight to streaming. It is. I mean, they just did just say it'll be on Amazon Prime, like all over the place. Yeah, maybe they're just trying to create some distance between like from like the time the delay was announced to when it's actually going out, so it gets less. Uh, less viewership? Like, I honestly don't know. Have any trailers come out for it? Let's see. Deep Water trailer. Let's see how many of them are for. Oh no, there were trailers that came out for it. Nope, nope, that's a fake trailer. And that's a different movie. Deepwater Horizon, which is actually a pretty good movie. Yeah, I don't really know what's going on here. So yeah. All right. Anything else? Anything else, guys? Because I can do this all night if I wanted to. I ain't got no boss. I don't got no one I need to wake up for tomorrow morning. I do need to feed the cat, but he is currently sleeping. Well, no, he's not sleeping. He's looking at me as if like he should be fed, but he hasn't been. He might come to kill me at some point. Hmm. Actually, you know what? Since I'm not going to be streaming until Sunday, it might be a good thing now just to take a look at what's coming out this week, besides from the films that I already talked about. So, of course, we have Death on the Nile. We have Kimi that came out on streaming today. And, of course, Worst Person in the World, which may have been released at some other point in some other places all over the world. All right, Josh, have a good night. But there are some other movies coming out. The one that looks the most interesting to me, at least, is this. There's like a sci-fi thriller called Cosmic Dawn that looks pretty cool. And I also want to point you guys in the direction of this film called Catch the Fair One. I saw this film. Let me confirm that it's the same thing. Yeah, I saw this film at Fantasia. Fantasia or Fantastic? It's Fantasia, I think. Fantasia. Can't spell, can't type. Yeah, yeah, Fantasia Festival. I saw this premiere at Fantasia this past year when I was just like checking the doing it digitally. It's a movie about a former MMA fighter, female MMA fighter who wants to find her missing sister, who she believes has been human trafficked, and it's basically her just going after human traffickers. And you know, of course, she's an MMA fighter, so she's punching some people. She's kicking some people. She's making some people hurt and bleed. And it quickly kind of turns into a revenge film, and it doesn't go well for anybody. It's a really great example of like a tight 90-minute thriller. Uh, some really good examples of like just like really nice like cinematography, very well executed in indie film, and I would suggest that you see it if you can. It's out in limited release. I don't know where you're going to see it. If you're in New York, I imagine you can go see it at IFC Cinemas since it is like an IFC film. They are a distributor. But beyond that, I don't know where you're going to be able to see it. But I would love it if you did because it's a solid indie film and it needs some of our support. Uh, any thoughts on Moonfall? I haven't been able to see it because the film was not released in Canada. There was a whole thing that happened where we in Ontario, where I live, we went into lockdown again at the beginning of January. I believe it was January 4th or something like that. And as a consequence of that, all movie theaters had to close. And with Moonfall coming out on February 3rd, because it's a big blockbustery type movie, they needed to make the decision as to whether or not they were going to start running ads to start promoting the film. But they didn't want to spend they didn't want to spend the money on the ads because they didn't know if theaters were going to be open for the February 3rd release date. So they just decided we're not going to release it. We're not going to release something that we can't promote, so we're not going to release it. And then as it turned out, they could have released it, but they just didn't know when theaters were going to be opening up. And it turned out that theaters actually did reopen on January 31st. So that it would have worked out fine, but to them it was too much of a business risk. It would have cost them money that they potentially would have lost on ads that may not have done them any good. So I can't watch Moonfall. And I don't know when I'm going to watch Moonfall. I'm sure it would have been a movie that I would have rolled my eyes at, that I would have thought to myself, "Oh, this is dumb. This is a real dumb film." And then my enjoyment of it would really depend on how well the dumb was executed. Like a really well executed dumb movie can be a lot of fun. A really poorly executed dumb film is just horrendous in all of the ways. Yeah, it kind of depends on where on that scale it would have fallen. I have absolutely no faith in Ronald Emmerich as a director, And I think he's actually a wonderful example of how Hollywood is not a meritocracy. If Hollywood was a meritocracy, Ronald Emmerich would not be allowed to direct films anymore. He especially would not be allowed to direct giant blockbuster films all the time. Like, just looking at his filmography, I'll just pull this up where I'm looking. Ronald Emmerich. Guy's made a bunch of big disaster movies that were bad, and also some that were good. Like Day After Tomorrow, I like that movie. I do like that movie. But yeah. Oh, you might go see Moonfall next week. You're just curious. Yeah, I don't have an opinion on it. I just know that Ronald Emmerich has this. He just hasn't made anything good, in a long time. I guess maybe White House Down was the last one he made that was kind of okay. Was it a good movie? I don't even really remember. But yeah, other stuff. He made 2012, which is not great. 10,000 BC, which was not great. The Independence Day sequel, which was not great. Midway, which got like panned, I think, pretty hard when it came out. Stonewall, I don't even know. Wait, he did a small coming of age film about Stonewall? The Stonewall riots in New York? You're fucking kidding me. You're kidding me. I have to see this. I have to see this movie. Are you kidding? Ronald Emmerich made a small film? No way. No way. What was the critical reception? Let's see. Oh no. On review aggregator website Rotten Tomatoes, which is a bullshit website, the film holds a 9% rating. Oh boy. With an average score of 3.7 out of 10. Did it premiere at TIFF though? It did. Oh no, it premiered at the festival and it was bad. It must have been like the Goldfinch of that year or something like that. Oh my god. Oh, ooh, controversy. Prior to release, the promotional trailer was criticized by many for its lack of representation of minorities who were prominently involved in the historical event, being the Stonewall riots. In particular, people of color, drag queens, butch lesbians, and trans women. Emmerich responded to the controversy saying, "The film is racially and sexually far more diverse than some people appear to think." Probably not the best way of responding to that. Irvine, who plays the lead in the role, denied the key historical figures had been omitted or whitewashed. To anyone with concerns about the diversity of the Stonewall movie, I saw the movie for the first time last week and can assure you that it represents almost every race and division of society that was so foundational to one of the most noteworthy civil rights moments in living history. Fascinating. Responding to the criticism the film itself received, Emmerich said of his casting choice, "I didn't make this movie only for gay people. I made it also for straight people. As a director, you have to put yourself in your movies, and I'm white and gay." Interesting. Also strange, though. Huh. Ronald Emmerich made a Faustian bargain. Yeah, I can believe that. Like, he's like, I always want to be able to make, like, big blockbuster films. And the devil's like, okay, but they're all going to be bad. And he's like, can I get, like, one okay one? And he's like, all right, you get one. And that one was Stargate. Independence Day, I know a lot of people hold up as like his best film, but like it's a little too racist for me these days. It's just a little too racist. Let's see what we got in the chat. I have like too many chat windows open. I think Ronald Emmerich is in the Illuminati. Maybe. There's something. Because even if you like make the argument that like, yeah, his films are bad, but they make money, they don't make a lot of money. Like, I think Day After Tomorrow did fairly well. Yeah, it made like 500 million off of a 125 million dollar box office, which is about breaking even, to be totally honest. 10,000 BC. I'm pretty sure that. Yeah, well, that was 105 million budget and it made 269 million. So if you go by the 4x standard for like making back money, it technically flopped. And if anyone's never heard that before, let me know and I'll explain it a little bit more. Whoa, 2012 made almost $800 million. All right, I take it back. Maybe his movies do make money on a $200 million budget. Jeez Louise. How much did Anonymous make? What the fuck? Oh, Anonymous is the Shakespeare movie that he made. Okay, that flopped. That flopped pretty hard. What about... Or no, let's do... Let's do White House Down first. What did that do? $150 million budget, box office 200, and yet they made sequels, so that's something. Independence Day, I'm pretty sure that flopped hard, did it not? Eh, almost $400 million on a $165 million budget. Nope, that doesn't do it. That doesn't do it. And I'm also pretty sure Midway flopped hard. Oh yes, 126 million box office on a $100 million budget. Yeah, that was a flop. So I guess it's only been recently that his films have started to not do well. I had no idea that 2012 was that commercially successful. I'm honestly surprised by that. I kind of want to go back kind of further and look at these. Yeah, I guess The Patriot did okay from box office perspective. Godzilla did pretty well, but I think that was mostly on the strength of its soundtrack being so good. Independence Day like fucking lit the world on fire. Yeah. $817 million on like a $75 million budget. Wild. I don't know why I'm going through these, but I think it's kind of fascinating. Yeah, Stargate did well. I forgot that Universal Soldier was one of his movies. Holy shit. That's kind of cool. Something like a Corman filmography, yeah. Yeah. I like The Day After Tomorrow. Don't know most of the films he directed. 2012 was fun too. I feel like I've accidentally seen like quite a few of his films, or like I didn't know they were his films. Like I know that I've seen. Well, I'll list them off. I've seen Universal Soldier, Stargate, Independence Day, Godzilla, The Patriot, The Day After Tomorrow, White House Down, Independence Day 2, and that's it. So like about half of all the films that he did. And there was that run from like Stargate all the way to Day After Tomorrow where I was like, yeah, I gotta watch Ronald Emmerich films because they're like big dumb blockbusters. Like he was the definition of big dumb blockbuster filmmaking in the late 90s and early 2000s. You could always count on him for like a big old disaster movie where things blew up real good. And he still does that. Moonfall is a disaster film. Midway, in a way, is kind of a disaster film. Independence Day certainly is. 2012 certainly is. And you're saying that that it was a lot of fun. I don't know if I've ever seen it. I can't remember seeing it. It kind of strikes me as one of those films that maybe I would have seen on like a late night cable network if TV still existed. TV does exist, of course. I mean, like subscribing to cable existing. A lot of those were cool movies. I enjoyed them when I saw them, but haven't seen them in a while. Yeah, they're not really movies that you revisit. Like, I remember being a kid, I would rewatch Independence Day all the time. Same with Godzilla. I would watch that a lot. I had them on VHS. Day After Tomorrow, I don't know if I ever owned that one on DVD or Blu-ray or anything like that. So it's hard to say. But I know I've seen it more than once. I think, yeah, it's kind of like that kind of classic, like Spike TV. Oh, I'm gonna rewatch this old movie and because I have nothing better to do and I'm a little bit hungover. Like, it's that kind of movie. It's also got young Jake Gyllenhaal in it, and actually, I think it also has like a bunch of random like Canadian actors in it. If you watch enough Canadian stuff from like the 80s into the 90s, I think more than a few of them show up in The Day After Tomorrow. Especially like when they get into the library and it's the library people. I think quite a few of those are Canadian actors. I'm trying to find an example of one. You? No, not, or maybe you. Are you Canadian? No. Maybe it's honestly just one person who I know is Canadian, and that's what I'm going off of. But like the librarian in the film. Yeah, she's played by Sheila McCarthy, who is Canadian, and she's been in like a bunch of Canadian stuff. One of which is referenced in my list of Canadian films that you should watch on Letterboxd. That film being, God, I just forgot the name of it. I've heard the mermaid singing. And she won the Genie Award for that, Best Actress. That was like what the Canadian Oscars were before they were rebranded the Canadian Screen Awards. Oh, so she also won that award for The Lotus Eaters. I guess you could say that she's one of Canada's hidden gem treasures. Last one I rewatched was Stargate or 2012 around the same time. Some goofy bits, but still fun. Yeah, I think there's still some fun in Stargate to be had when you're watching it. Uh, and also I have like a great fondness for the Stargate television series that came afterwards. Like I was a huge Stargate fan in the 2000s, and that's the film that started it all was the Ronald Emmerich one. So I still enjoy it, and it's still like used a lot of really cool like practical effects. I was able to mix in like CGI like sparsely but in a good way. It's kind of the best thing about 90s filmmaking is that CGI hadn't progressed to the point that you could do like, entire characters with it or entire scenes. Like you still had to create a lot of stuff practically, but you could still use the CGI for like, lightning bolts and shit like that. And it looked cool. It looked cool. Also, it's the same thing with Independence Day. A lot of practical stuff mixed with a lot of with like some accenting CGI type things. And that's one of the reasons why I thought it was like so cool when I was a kid. And like, I just when something is a CGI fest, man, I don't like it. And you know what? Maybe that brings me back to Death on the Nile just quickly. For a goddamn movie that is not an action movie, they use CGI a lot in that. And I understand it's because they're trying to recreate a part of Egypt that doesn't really exist as it did back then now. And like it's way easier for them to like make a CGI boat instead of building a full ass boat to sail down the Nile. But there is like a lot of CGI in Death on the Nile, like more than you would expect, and a lot of it is not good. Like almost like there were times when I was like looking at this boat and thinking to myself like there aren't really any textures here. It's kind of just white and gold. Maybe I'm just misremembering, but really, yeah, just like no, no. It's still a no. Death on the Nile. Twister is my favorite disaster movie. I think it's the best of that genre. That's a pretty sick one from the 90s. It's a pretty good one. I'm trying to think like what my favorite disaster movie would be. What is my favorite disaster movie? Huh. I don't know. I'd have to look into that a bit more. SG1 was great, and the other two were enjoyable, solid, occasionally ridiculous, and I would rewatch them all again. Oh yeah, I know that I'm due for like a. Oh, I just realized my microphone's just been here hanging out this whole time. I'm due for like a Stargate rewatch, but I think I'm gonna do Babylon 5 first because I've just really been, I've been really jonesing for some Babylon 5. If something was sci-fi and it was made in the 90s, I definitely fucking love it and watch it and still watch it to this day. Let's take a quick look at like list of best disaster films because I want to give you that answer, like what I think my favorite disaster movie is, but I'm just like not able to think of it off the top of my head right now. Uh, Sky Underwater, get fucked. Okay, let's see what this Vulture article's got for me. And I'm sure they're gonna have like maybe a loose definition of what a disaster film is. The Swarm, Twister they've got on here. Oh, Deep Impact. Deep Impact I kind of like. I do kind of like Deep Impact. Like I also got Armageddon. Earthquake from 1974 is pretty cool. Wandering Earth is like eh. Oh, Dante's Peak. Oh shit, Volcano. It might be Volcano. It might be Volcano. There's a lot going on in Volcano, and I kind of love it for that. Like it has like that kind of stoop. Like the premise is so silly that there's like a volcano in Los Angeles, and then it's like, all right, we got to do things like we got to make a lava river with using concrete blocks and things like this. It's just like, wow, fantastic, fantastic stuff going on here. Day After Tomorrow is actually pretty good too. Greenland, really? That's supposed to be good? Wild. Pompeii, Only the Brave, Perfect Storm. Oh, The Wave. Oh, yeah. I think that was actually brought up before. I think someone was saying how The Wave was like another good example of a Norwegian film. Yeah, uh, uh, the original The Wave, and I know it was remade with uh, Julia Louise Dreyfus, and wow, like one of the most famous actors from the last couple of decades, Ron Burgundy. God damn it, Ron Burgundy's in it. Um, I keep wanting to call him Will Smith. I don't know why my brain is wired like that right now. Oh no. Oh god damn it, this is so embarrassing. Will Ferrell. Yeah, they were in a remake of The Wave. I haven't seen that. The original is quite good. Is A Quiet Place technically a disaster film? I think I would qualify it more as an invasion film, and also like a bit more post-apocalyptic than it is disaster. You know? Yeah, yeah. Oh, they have Airplane here listed here as a disaster film. That was pretty great. Oh, Contagion. Holy shit. I can't believe I didn't think of that. I also didn't think of it as a disaster film because it's like a virus. But yeah, it's a disaster movie for sure. So Contagion would probably be my top one. Also, Outbreak is kind of fucking great. Melancholia, the Lars von Trier film, I also like that one. Although it's not what I would call a disaster film, it's kind of like an emotional roller coaster, not even emotional roller coaster ride of a film. It's like character study that just ends with the world ending at the end. Apologies if you've never seen Melancholia and I've just spoiled it for you. A Night to Remember is a really interesting one. It's like one of the first film adaptations of the Titanic disaster. That's a solid one. Also, they have here listed Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds, which, yeah, kind of makes sense. You're seeing the very early parts of a disaster, but it's still a disaster. And actually, oh man, I kind of want to do an entire video just on like three very specific shots in The Birds. There's some really cool stuff that happens in that film. They also have Titanic listed here, as well as Towering Inferno and stuff like that. So I'm going to say Contagion, just based on this list I saw and what it reminded me of. There's a couple of interesting choices in this list as well. Like disaster seems to be a very broad genre that they're going with. How about Knowing? Good movie. The Nicolas Cage one, I have not seen that one. So I cannot speak to it. There was a Fallout movie with Steven Guttenberg that was pretty good. Steve Guttenberg. I'm gonna find it. Oh, that guy. And what did you say? A Fallout movie. Shit, his filmography is gonna be so long. I'm never gonna be able to find this. Yeah, no, it's gonna be tough. Let's see if I can just tell by the names here. It's probably not After Party. Looking up. Cornered. No. Shannon's Rainbow? No, probably not. Sorry, it was what? A Fallout movie. Fatal Rescue? Maybe? It Takes Two, Home for the Holidays, High Spirits. Oh, Three Men and a Baby, of course. The famous Fallout film, Three Men and a Baby. Police Academy 1, Police Academy 2, 3, and 4? This is kind of like around this where the cycle would have been in the 70s. Maybe Roller Coaster? I mean, that kind of looks like a disaster film. Yeah, it's definitely a thriller. Diner? No, it's not Diner. The Man Who Wasn't There. Oh, Short Circuit. That's fun. A little cheesy. I think it was a TV movie. Oh, gotcha. Didn't see the remake, but the Norwegian film was awesome. Talking about the wave. Yeah, it's pretty sick. Uh, oh, Dory, you're right. I fucked up. You're right. Julie Louis-Dreyfus and Will Ferrell did a movie called Downhill, which is a remake of the Dutch film Force Majeure. But I still think I saw the wave though. Let me just yeah, because Force Majeure, yeah, Force Majeure is they're at the like ski resort, and there's like like a supposed avalanche happening, and the husband runs away, and then for the rest of the film, the family is trying to grapple with like the father abandoning them, whereas the wave also has kids involved, but it's mostly like there's like some kind of like earthquake thing that drops a bunch of stone or something into like a river, and then a big wave comes for this small sort of isolated Norwegian town. And I think the wave also like in that the disaster happens like maybe at the end of the first act, maybe in the middle of the film, and then the rest of the film is about them escaping after like the wave like fucked up a bunch of stuff. So you're right, Dory. Thank you very much for correcting me, and thanks for being here. You're here a little bit late. Usually you're the first person in the chat, but don't worry. I assume that you were like out at the movies watching something. Dory, you have to tell me then. Did you see either The Worst Person in the World? Or no, you saw. I think you said you saw it early. Did you see Death on the Nile, Death on the Nile, whatever it's called, today? And what did you see? Let me know. Oh, excuse me. Sheila McCarthy. Just closing some tabs. Also, because I'm on a new computer, I don't have like all of my scenes set up properly. So like right now, my internet looks like just this. This will look better eventually, I promise. But now, oh no, the chat went away. I'm an idiot. It's called The Day After, the Steve Gutenberg one. Right on, right on. Um, I'm usually in bed by 8 p.m. Oh dang! All right, didn't realize that. Well, thank you for being up late. It's way past your bedtime, man. My goodness. Um, but cool. Yeah, we were just chatting about some movies. I'm going to be clipping some of this stuff. Oh, by the way, something I should mention. I'm changing a little bit with the live streams on this channel. They are still going to be available, but they won't be in the main list of videos. They're just going to have their own playlist where they're going to be unlisted videos. So if you want to go back and like rewatch a live stream or watch a very particular thing, you have to go to that specific playlist. And yeah, basically, I just didn't want there to be like a whole bunch of live streams like cluttering up the main feed. So yeah, you saw Tree of Life today. Nice. Was that your first time seeing Tree of Life? I remember seeing that when it came out in theaters on a date, and afterwards we were just like having a drink, talking about it, and we're mostly just like, "Wow, what the hell was that?" Oh, it's good times, good times. Last time we went out though, no more dates after that one. Never see a Terrence Malick film on a date. You'll probably have a bad time. But that was your first time watching it. Right on, man. Glad that you're still getting out and seeing some of the classics or new classics, I guess in that case. Oh, excuse me. And again. All right, all right, all right, all right. As Matthew McConaughey has said before, I think I'm gonna call this one a night. It is a little bit past midnight. I see there's probably like one more thing. Tree of Life won the Palme d'Or. Yes, it did. It did indeed. Um, so that is where I'm going to leave it for today. Thank you very much for everyone who stopped by to chat with me. We're going to be doing more of these in the future, I am sure. So get subscribed, notification bell. You guys know the drill. You've been here before. And I will see you on Sunday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where we're going to talk about whatever secret movie I see Sunday morning is. And I don't know, maybe I'll just talk about football. Yeah, would you guys like that if I just do like a whole Super Bowl pre-show? God, I don't even think I'd be able to do that. I would just hate myself. Have a good night. See you later for sure. Thank you for joining. And I'll see you guys Sunday, 2 p.m. sharp. Don't miss it. Or else. Nothing will happen. Don't worry. I'm not gonna like get revenge or anything. I'm not the vengeful type. Or am I? I could be. But I'm not. Don't worry about it. It's gonna be deep water. What's gonna be deep water? Oh, the secret movie. If it is, like I'll let you guys know immediately, and like I will in the live stream at 2 p.m. All right. Have a good night, everybody. Have a good Friday. See.